Hello, and welcome to Essentials of Computer Vision Week number 1. So, this is a study group that we form on Facebook, and you can join, and it will be completely free. And what we're going to do is we're going to come together once a week to sort of work through the materials that is in here. So you can take a look at the website, the Repo, and you look at the study guide. And under the study guide, you'll see that it's structured into chapters. So chapter number 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, 4, 5. All right. And what we're going to do essentially is that we're going to meet once a week, and we're going to work through all of the materials, and we're going to try and attempt some of the homework, some of the quizzes, some of the questions. The idea is to get you to be very, very familiar with working with computer vision models, running, and this will serve you very, very well in a lot of with real-world data sets, right? So the way that the course is structured, we're going to focus on first principles. We're going to use a very visual approach. So I'm going to give you all of the data sets that you need, all of the images. You're free to experiment on your own images. So if you have some images sitting on your computer that's perfect, read them in there. You can use your own images if you want to. And we're going to try and assume that everyone starts from a complete new, very beginner friendly, completely new slate, right? So we're going to assume that everyone has no prior experience working with anything mentioned in here. So Opencv, Pillow. We're going to assume that you've never heard of those terms. You don't know what Opencv is, all right? So this is all going to be step-by-step explanations. We're going to use real-life images, real-life projects, build some of these examples that you see on this screenshot, and we're going to be doing all of those things as well. I will also have some intuition videos that I'll put up on my YouTube, and so if you follow me on YouTube, you could actually watch some of these supplementary videos. They're not required, but they would help you with getting a clearer sense, a more concrete idea of what those concepts, what are the math behind those concepts. And then finally, we're gonna try and learn by building. So how we achieve that is we're gonna have to do a few assignments here and there. They're not gonna be too many of them because we are ultimately gonna meet only once a week, right? So I don't wanna give you way too much work. I wanna just give you enough of materials for you to practice on, and then the next week we're gonna try and solve the quiz for the previous week. Okay, so this is a math-first approach to learning computer vision in Python. So I think that's really, really important. A lot of times you go on blogs, you go on tutorials, you see a computer vision materials just focus on, okay, you apply this and this is how it works, and you don't even know what is the mathematical foundation behind those ideas. You don't know why certain things work. You use a very high level library like Keras, for example, and it hides away all of these mathematical details because it's built for that kind of convenience and speed, right? It's not supposed to bog you down with all the details. You're not trying to use MATLAB to implement stuff. You just want to use a library that performs certain things and get you the results you want. This repository, let me give you the URL right now. This is or I can actually bring it down a little bit so you can see them, right? So this is github.com/ my username only phantom / CV essentials, right? I know you can't see it because it's cut off right here, but I'm gonna put a link down in the description, and you can click on that link as well. So okay, math-first approach to learning computer vision. All of the materials will be found in this repository. So you'll find the HTML, you'll find the PDF, the Markdown, the Python scripts, data, media assets, videos, links. All of those links would all be in the repository. If you want to contribute, then I need some translations. If you want to contribute in, maybe you want to translate some of the documents, some of the materials in here, feel free to do so, and then submit a pull request. So we can merge that in here. And so folks from other countries who, maybe English is not a first language for a lot of us, including mine, right? So folks can learn in their own preferred language. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get our computer, get our working machines started, and I'll walk you through the process. We're going to be using Python 3, and I assume that if you're watching this video, you probably have some familiarity with Python 3, but if you don't, let me give you a quick introduction, and I want you to just go and find out more about Python on your own and look up resources and learn more about it. Okay, there's a lot of resources on the internet for you to pick up Python and actually get pretty far, maybe up to intermediate level, before you need to start exploring on your own. Okay, so Python is a general purpose scripting language, which means it's used by developers to build all kind of projects ranging from web development, databases, utility, data science, tooling, scientific computing, automation, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence. It's used for all kind of purposes. Now, in the last few years, because of its relatively low learning curve, it has seen its popularity soar among first-time developers, and it's one of the fastest growing programming languages today. Just like R, it is also an integrated part of any data scientist toolbox. So if you're actually trying to pick up data science as either as a hobby, as a profession, then you definitely want to add Python into your toolbox, okay? And being well-versed with Python opens a whole field of opportunities, allowing you to work on web development projects, IoT, Internet of Things, smart utilities, and wearable technology, and build all kind of machine learning models. A whole ecosystem has around Python has sprung about, and there's all kind of sort of deep learning libraries, machine learning libraries, toolkits built around Python, giving you access to a lot of cutting-edge research in this field. So with that said, how do we go about setting that up? Now, I'm in my terminal. I'm on a MacBook, but you should be using, if you're using a Linux, if you're using a Windows, that's all fine. Just make sure that you have Python installed first. If you do not know how to do that, if you don't have Python installed, if you don't know what I'm talking about right now, then I want you to pause the video, and I'll give you a link where you can go up there and you can sort of follow along the article and get Python installed. Okay, so that it will contain very detailed instructions, step-by-step instructions on how to get about installing Python, the latest version of Python 3, onto your computer. But I'm gonna sort of just give you a second here, and we're gonna come back here, and once you have Python 3 installed, you're ready to go. Manage to get Python installed on your computer. If you're still struggling, maybe you go on some articles and you find that the instructions are outdated and you didn't manage to follow through on that, or you find that the instructions are unclear, then I've pasted a link to one of my lessons. So this is installing Python 3. So this is the full URL, findtune.com/lesson/installing Python 3. So if you click onto it, it's completely free, by the way, so you can just sign up for an account. It's free. But if you want to just follow along, skip to, if you're using a Windows, if you're using the Windows OS, skip to Python for Windows user and follow through the 3 steps process in here. If you're on Mac OS, then follow through the 3 steps process in here. If you're on Linux, then follow on the 2 to 3 steps in here. There's a good chance that you already have this, right? But if you're not able to follow along because you were stuck somewhere, then follow the instructions on this article instead. And I'll give you a second, and it will come back here. By the time we come back here, we check that everyone has Python 3 installed. Install Python 3 on your computer, on your machine. So how do we check that it has done that correctly? All right. So you could actually just write Python and actually just execute that. You will see that if you manage to do this, it would be a command that your computer can understand. So you would see that, okay, this is Python 2.7.16. This is not recommended because it has been sunsetted. It has been retired from. They're no longer being maintained. So we want to be on Python 3 and above. Okay, so I'm gonna quit this, and I'm gonna just type Python 3 and see what happened here. Now I'm on 3.9.1. That's fine. Now you could be maybe on 3.8. You may be on 3.9.2. But whatever it is, as long as you're in Python 3 and you have that installed, then you're fine. Okay, you can type QUIT quit to exit the Python terminal and get back to your Windows command prompt, terminal, bash, G shell, whichever it is, shell management that you're using. All right. And if you understand a little bit about virtual environments, we haven't touched on that yet, but if you understand virtual environments and you know how to activate that, you can also do that, right? So if you understand virtual environments, we'll go into that if you don't understand what I'm saying here, but if you do, you can just go ahead and create a new virtual environment. You can just do make virtual environment if you have the virtual environment wrapper installed. If not, you can just do your venv, whatever it is that you use, all right? So just get an environment ready for yourself, for you to install the packages and libraries and all of that. For now though, we could actually go ahead, write Python 3, and we could do our code in here. We could run our code. We could start saying open import OS, and we can then do things like print, or we can say import datetime and print datetime now, whatever that is. But we're not gonna actually write our code in here. Why? Because it's much more friendlier for you to write code in a what we call an integrated development environment. So it's much better for you to write code in a IDE, integrated development environment. So what this will allow you to do is to write your code and give you all of the formatting and all of the syntax highlighting and give you all of the nice goodies that comes with it. So kind of like you can write your code, you can write English, for example, in a notepad, but you probably wouldn't do that. Why? Because you would probably use Microsoft Word for you to compose anything of any meaningful length. You would probably go into Microsoft Word because it gives you all of the formatting, all of the tools for you to write your I don't know, poem, or write your essays or your letters. So you will use Microsoft Word for that instead of trying to write it in a plain text editor like this, right? So it's up to you what you want to pick. There are a few very popular choices. You can use Atom, you can use Sublime, you can use Visual Studio Code. My personal preference, my personal choice is Visual Studio Code. So I'm gonna actually go ahead and get you set up for Visual Studio Code. Installing Visual Studio Code is really simple. You go to code.visualstudio.com and you choose, if you're on a Mac OS, click on the Mac OS installer. If you're on a Windows, get the one from Windows. If you're on Linux, then depending on if you're on a Debian or not, you choose the right one. And then you follow through the process, give it about 1 to 2 minutes, and you should be good to go. If you need a bit of a step-by-step here, I also have a link that will be on here. So /lessons, and then this is the URL for that. I'm also gonna paste the link in the description. What it does is give you a quick breakdown of what it is, and then it gives you an idea of how to configure it, how to set it up. But once you have Visual Studio Code set up, you will need to go ahead and make sure that it runs with your Python. And then if you don't know how to do that, we'll walk through it together. But also on the URL, if you go to the article, it gives you sort of an instruction on that, right? So click on the extension, and then from there install Python, and then once you've done that, create a new Python script. Just make sure everything is good and dandy, right? So we're gonna give you a second for you to install Visual Studio Code, and then I'm gonna open that up and walk you through the process. Now that you have Visual Studio Code installed, you're ready to go. So first thing first, let's create a folder where we could download all of the materials onto our computer or onto our local. So this could be anywhere. You could go to the desktop, you could just right click, create a new folder, name it anything you want. You could say this is the computer vision study group. You could call it CV study. You can name it anything you want. You could go to your Dropbox and you can create a folder in there. It's up to you. But for what I'm gonna do instead, I'm gonna create a folder just like you. So let me go ahead and do that now. I'm gonna say documents, work, Kurgi, and that it's probably there. And I'm gonna make a directory. So I'm gonna call it CV study group. You can name it anything you want. You can also say change directory, CV study group. So you don't actually have to do any of this. If you don't want to, you could just have all of this running in your documents. So what I'm actually doing here is basically just going to my documents folder, going to the work directory, and then going to the Kurgi subdirectory, and from there I make a new folder and I name it CV study group, and I change the directory, so I move it in there. You could use a mouse honestly for this. You could just right click, create new folder, and then do all of this. LS stands for list. So mkdir stands for make directory, cd stands for change directory, ls stands for list. So you're listing out all of this stuff, and you see that there's nothing in there and the reason there's nothing in there is because we just created this folder and it's completely empty right now. Okay, so there's nothing in there, it's completely empty right now. So now that we have this, we have a folder, we need to start to download all of these materials in here. So I'm gonna be introducing you something called the Git or the GitHub. And again, if you don't want to do that, I'll give you an alternative. Okay? But the first thing, so this is the URL that we have. It's here. So first thing first, if you don't have a GitHub account, you really should sign up for one. Okay? And to sign up for one, you go to github.com and you click on oops, I'm probably gonna have to use a incognito mode, private browsing mode, and so I can sign in, so I can show you the sign up account. Okay, here, so go to github.com github.com, which is here, click on sign up, and then you create your own username, put an email address, put a password, and then you create an account right here. Okay, so I'm gonna give you 1 minute to do that. Once you have, pause the video right now, create an account. It's free. Sign up for a GitHub account, and once you have that, go to this URL, and I'll teach you what to do next. Okay, so pause the video right now. Make sure you have two things. The first thing, make sure you create a folder. It doesn't matter where it is. It could be on your desktop, it could be in your downloads folder, it could be on your programs files directory, it could be in your Dropbox. It doesn't matter. All right, create a folder, and then the next thing you do is sign up for a GitHub account. So all you need to do is to go to github.com, click on the button, and put in your username, put in your password, put in your email, and then sign up for an account. And then when you're done, then we resume this video. So pause the video right now, and I'll see you in a second. As a quick aside, while you're doing that, I've gone ahead and actually set up a virtual environment, and I named my virtual environment CV, which stands for computer vision. So a virtual environment is a tool that helps you keep dependencies required by different projects separate. So it creates some isolation, some isolated Python virtual environments for each of your project, and this is one of the most important tools. And if you want to know more about it, including how to install a virtual environment, how to set it up, why is it important, what are the libraries that that provide this kind of facilities and stuff, I'm going to give you a link real quick. You can also go to this link, and let me show you how it looks like. And it will give you all of the details about what virtual environment is, and it gives you the instructions for you to install and set up your first virtual environment. So if you don't know how to do that, if this is the first time you're hearing that, then I want you to pause the video again and go ahead and set that up. This is completely optional, but I think it's quite important that you have an understanding of what it is. All right, now if you don't want to worry about that, then you don't have to. So first thing, you can just I think we can just get right into the project right away and get started with all of those things. So if you open up your code editor right now, you type code and you put a dot, so that would say open up Visual Studio Code in my current directory. You can either use this command, this shortcut command, or you could actually just use a mouse and just look at where you installed Visual Studio Code, double click on that, and it would also open up Visual Studio Code for you. For me, I like to do everything in the terminal. It's very fast, very convenient, and code dot basically says use Visual Studio Code to open in the current directory. That's what the dot stands for. Now if I press enter, if I hit enter, what would happen is my computer is going to be taken over by this screen right here. So I'm now in the CV study group, and Visual Studio Code just launch is launched right in here in the right directory. Okay, and now I'm gonna show you how to get started with Visual Studio Code and the materials that we're gonna be working through. Two ways you can follow along the entire series. Now the first one is to not worry about Git and just go ahead and follow directly on the repository. So the repository itself, you can find all of the materials right in here. So week number 1, actually in fact I think probably week number 2, the first chapter, we're gonna look into Affine Transformation. So if you were to click into any of these links, all of these links to different parts of the materials, so let me show you what I mean by that. If I click into definition, then what it's gonna do is to bring you to the transformation chapter, and then it's gonna open up the HTML. You could open up the .md as well, and you can read it through, and we will go through all of these materials together, and we'll write the code. So you could do that. You can open up Visual Studio Code and do it side by side, and I'll show you how to do that. But for me, I like to have things locally, so it's faster, and I can experiment on that, and I can have a copy of that, a version of that. But you would also worry about having to download this new set of materials every time and worry about overwriting content. So let's say you look at this and you want to write some extra notes in here, and you're worried that when you write some notes in here, now the original copy of that is no longer preserved. So this is where Git is really, really helpful. So what I like you to do is to consider installing Git. So this is the first method. You don't need to do any of this. You can just skip right into the lesson right away. The second one is to install Git. And I don't get to cover into that because I feel like these are things that you should be able to look up on the internet and get a very simple tutorial on how to install Git and how to set that up. Now, if you want my tutorial, this is the URL right here. So this installing Git will walk you through the process, and it give you an idea of what is Git, what is GitHub, what do you need version control, how do you do that in on Linux, how do you do that on Windows, and how do you do that on Mac. So it gives you all of the instructions. It's very detailed, give you all of the different command line that you need to run. All you need to do is to just copy and paste and get it done. It should take you less than 5 to 10 minutes. So if you need to do that, you can pause the video and do that. If you want to skip this process, you can also do that, okay? But I'm going to assume you have done that in the next step. Okay, now that you have Git installed, you can actually do Git, and you can say Git init, initialize a new Git repo in this current document. So if you don't understand what I'm talking about here, when I say Git init, initialize something, and you said, oh, that sounds like magic to me, I don't know what's happening right now, then I really encourage you to pause the video again, go back to the article that I just go back to my tutorial and work through that and get at least a basic understanding of what Git is. Really work through that, okay? If you need to sign up for a free account, sign up for a free account. The whole cost on that thing is free. So all of the materials that I'm posting here are all free, okay? So we're not gonna have to worry about that. What I need you to do is to just do a Git clone. What I need you to do is to go to GitHub and go into this link, this URL here. Okay, go to this URL. Once you're signed in to GitHub, you should be able to see a fork button in here, a fork and a star. If you want to be notified of any updates in here, the best way to follow it is to just either watch it or star it. If you want to just follow along all of these materials and create a copy of that, so fork a copy of that, right? So sort of take a copy of what it is right now at this time, at this point of time, and put that into your own account of GitHub, then you can do a fork. So fork basically says take a copy of all of this code at this time and fork that into my account. So you can do a Git fork. So you can do a fork right now and it goes to your account. Once it goes into your account, you can do a Git clone. So this is how we do it. We say Git clone, and then what do we do here? Well, we can paste in the link to the Git, to the remote Git. So we can go into code and we can copy that. So just like that, right? So just basically the repo URL, and then we put a .git right there. If you already fork it to your account, then this will probably be your own name. So this is whatever username that you choose, and then .git. So when you do a Git clone, let me run that command right now. What you do is that it says it clone into. So it goes into this directory, it opens up a new folder called CV Essentials, and it cloned, basically download a copy of all the content, and it put that right into CV Essentials under this path, this directory. Okay, so we give it a second here. I'm going to speed up the video so that you don't have to watch this load, and I want you to do that on your computer as well to make sure you have all of the materials downloaded. And not just the materials, but all the images and stuff. Okay, so it's done. Alright, so how do we verify that it's done? Well, we can do ls. Remember we did ls earlier? We did the ls here and we see that there's nothing in there, right? There's nothing in this CV study group. It's completely a new directory. It's empty in there. Now we're going to do ls again, and what do you see? You see a new folder in there. So Git clone basically takes a copy of all the materials, all of the code in here, all of the documents of the code of the assets. It clones that and put that in this directory. So now when we do ls, ls stands for list. ls stands for list. Okay, so list out the content in here. Now we see CV Essentials. So what we can do is to just change directory to CV Essentials. And now we're in that folder. So if you go into CV study group and if you use a mouse, if you use a GUI, you will be able to just use the mouse without having to write all of this code, right? Once you're in CV Essentials, okay, once you're in CV Essentials, you can do an ls again, and you'll see that all of these assets, all of the stuff, digit recognition, edge detection, summary, notes transformation, all of these are already installed to your local computer. All of that is stored into your local directory. Okay, so I'll give you a second for you to run the git clone command, and we'll come back. Okay, now that you've done all of this, there is only one last step left before we start to write some actual code and start to play with the camera and start to read some images and actually go through the materials. I know this is a lot of setup work, and that's why I make a dedicated video just to put all of these things together. So if this is the first time you're touching code in Python, this will take you probably up to 2 hours because you'll be pausing, you'll be doing things, you'll be learning about things on your go. But if you actually done Python before, if you have some experience with Python, then this should be a quick setup, 3-5 minutes maybe, setting up a new virtual environment, installing the stuff. This is the last step now before we actually get to go and do the fun stuff. Now this step, we need to install all the required dependencies. So in Python, because I told you it's a massive ecosystem, Python is used for all kind of things, right? We use Python for natural language processing, we use that for machine learning, we use that for cybersecurity, we use that to build tools, to build IoT, to build networking, to build web applications, to build databases. We use Python for a lot of things. Now, Python has some libraries that allows us to work with images and facilitate the process and provide some nice utilities for us so that we can be more productive when it comes to working with images, changing colors, reading, detecting items in the image and stuff. So I told you we're going to be using a math-first approach, so we're not going to be installing any high-level libraries. I want you to just use Opencv and learn everything from scratch. So that would actually set you on a very good foundation, because you're not cheating yourself by going on and use a very high-level library like Keras or anything like that. Okay, you're not using some sort of like that. You're not using TensorFlow or Fast AI. You're not using any of those high-level libraries. You're using very, very simple NumPy and Opencv. That's all you do. So to do that, you could go ahead and do a pip install, and you can start to install all of the libraries that you need. So for example, you can say Opencv, this and that. But good thing is that if you followed all the way up to this point, you should already have requirements.txt. So what you can tell Python to do is you can say pip install, and you can say -r. -r means recursively, and then you say requirements.txt. So what is this actually doing? Now this is saying that go into requirements.txt, and let's take a look at, before we run this command, right? Let's go ahead and see what it is. Let's go ahead and say nano requirements.txt, or you can open that up in Notepad, that's up to you. But it gives you all of these libraries that you need to have. Okay, so we're gonna exit now. Oops. It contains all of the libraries that you need. These are all your requirements. So what you can do is to just say a pip install, and you see recursively. Recursively means go through every line on requirements.txt. For each line, do a pip install. So we're gonna do .txt, and we're gonna press enter, and I'm gonna speed up the video to make sure I've done all of the installations, and I need you to do the same. So pause the video, make sure you've installed all of that stuff. Okay, I do want to mention something real quick. If you are actually having any trouble with installing the dependencies, maybe because you have a newer version of Python, then don't worry about installing the requirements file. You may, if you get into some failure, what you can do is to just install just the bare minimum of it. All right, the bare minimum is the Opencv config Python. So all you need to do is to forget about the requirements.txt, and you do pip install Opencv-contrips-python, and that's really the only one thing that you need right now. As we add on more things, more items, we can handle that later. All right, but for now, really, you can just forget about all the requirements and just do one single thing. If you don't have a problem, if you don't have an error, that's fine. You can install all of that in one go, so you don't have to worry about that down the road. But now, for anyone who is following, if you're having any kind of trouble, you can do that. Another one is to just leave a comment on Facebook, in the Facebook group, in the study group, and tell me where exactly, paste your error and tell me where exactly you need help, and I'll be happy to take a look at what you did wrong and give you some pointers on that. Okay, so once you've done all of those things, if you do a pip list, this will show you all of the packages that you have installed into Python, and I see that Opencv config Python is done, it's installed. So I'm gonna go ahead and say code dot, which means open up Visual Studio Code in the current directory again, right? So I have now in my working directory all of these folders, and Visual Studio Code is open in this directory, so I see all of these items in here. So our first chapter starts from transformation, so that's where we're gonna start. But for now, I don't want you to worry about that. For now, I want you to just very quickly open up a single file and just call week1, and I want you to just say week1.py. That stands for a Python file. Py stands for Python. So you click on week1.py, and I want you to just try something really, really simple to make sure all of this is working. Now, if you look at the bottom of your Visual Studio Code, you should see that you're in that environment where you would be able to find your the right version of Python and the packages that you have installed into this Python environment. Okay. Now you have week1.py, and so one really cool trick is that you could also click onto the extensions. This is the extension, and look for Markdown extended. In the Markdown extended, look for Markdown preview enhanced. I believe it's enhanced, not extended. So look for Markdown enhanced, and look for the one by Yi Wang. So that one has 2 million downloads. Click on that one and install that. So all you need to do is to click on the green button. I already have that, so I don't have the green button. I only have a settings icon. So if you haven't installed that, you should see a green button that says install. So I want you to do that right now. So Markdown preview enhanced. So what does it do actually when you install that? So what it does is it allows you to open up nodes. Let me show you. Markdown nodes. Let me show you. Okay, transformation. Click on this one, for example, and then it allows you to just click on this icon, and you can now look at the document. This is the Markdown document. This is a preview of that rendered in HTML. So in HTML, you see all of the content, any transformation, and this is, I can edit that right away. I can say, let's talk about week 1 notes, right? So let's say week 1 notes, some simple setup instructions to get us up and running for the study group on computer vision sessions. Essentials, sorry. Okay, so let's put some notes in here. Let's go ahead and actually say, we could say installing Git Visual Studio Code. Probably move Python up first here. Python Git installing Visual Studio Code, and installing the libraries, which is done using Pip Install, and then -r requirements, right? So this is what we did so far. Of course, you can also make some quality of life improvements by installing Markdown preview enhanced, so that you have this really nice functionality. So this is not something that Visual Studio Code provides to you out of the box. This is something that you have to add onto Visual Studio Code. And so search for it, click on this icon, extension, this one, extension, and then search Markdown preview enhanced, click on it, click on the install button, and you should be able to get going. Okay, so this is week 1. All right, so once you have all of this set up, I'm gonna save this, and I'm gonna close this up. Now I'm gonna just go back to the week1.py, right? Remember I told you to just create a new file, and the way you create a new file, let me delete that and start all over again so that you can follow along, right? And if you think the video is too fast, feel free to just pause and follow along, right? So CV Essentials, there is a new file right up here. Click on that new file icon, give it a name. I'm gonna call it week1.py, and we're gonna do the bare minimum to make sure that all of this is all set up and ready to go. Now in week1.py, I'm gonna look at some assets, some images. What do we have? Corgi. What do we have? Let's maybe look at the homework. This one, right? This is good. Okay, so this is week1.py. All right, that's our file. So usually when you create a Python file, the file is executed from top to bottom. Again, I will link to my tutorial where you can learn more about Python and you can learn about all of those stuff. I cannot go into those details because I want to keep it on topic and keep it very focused. So, what are we going to do with a Python file? So we're going to start to do something really, really simple. I'm going to write some commands here. We're going to read our images, read our image in, and then render our image. And finally, we're going to ask Python to show our image. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. So go ahead, create week1.py. If you need a bit of time, pause the video, and once you've done, this is when we put a pound sign in front, a hashtag. That means this line is interpreted as a command, so it's gonna be skipped by Python when it executes the code. Okay, so how do we read our image in there? Now remember I told you that the bare minimum we can do is to read in CV, Opencv, right? Now when you want to use a package in Python, we need to import it. So we're gonna say import CV2. Now CV2 is the library that we installed either through Pip Install, either we did it through Pip Install and we do the whole Opencv Python config, or you just use any other methods to install that, maybe pip install requirements -r requirements.txt, or you maybe use conda. If you know what conda is and you're using conda, that's fine as well, as long as you can get up to this point. Import CV2, and then this is gonna give us this will import the package, and we will then use CV2 to perform our actions. So how do we read our image in there? Now the simplest thing you can do is to just do cv2.imread. imread stands for image read. Okay, so this loads an image from a file. So here it says load an image from a file. This function imread loads an image from the specified file and returns it. So because it returns it, we need to save it somewhere. Okay, so because it returns it, what we need to do is to just give it a name. You can call it image if you want to, you can call it img if you want to, but essentially what we have is we say cv2.imread, and that will read our image. Now we pass in the path to that image. Now this could be anywhere, but I realize that it's in the homework section, so I'm gonna go into homework / and I'm gonna say _raw. If you name it, if you have another file, if you have a different file sitting somewhere, you can do that. So let me go and take a image, and I will say this image. I'll copy that, and I can paste it right in here. This is week 1. I can paste this right in here. Okay, so I have venice.jpg. So I could also go ahead and say venice.jpg. So I don't need to touch the other folder because it's already in here. So I could say read the image from this path. So I'm gonna close this file now. Okay, and then what you're gonna do is this is gonna return an object, right? You wanna pass this along to image, so you wanna assign that to a variable called image. And then I guess what you can do as well is you can go ahead and quickly let's do the step 1, step 2, step 3. Step 1, we read that image. Step 2, we just have to load it in. Step 3, we just have to print it. Let's just show it. Okay, let's just go ahead and just do something really simple. Let's just say ImShow. Okay, and we're gonna call this our Venice image. Venice photograph. This is taken when I was in Venice, so I'm gonna say Venice photograph, and I'm gonna just pass in image. Okay, so this is it, 3 lines of code. So what do we do? Import cv2. imread stands for image read, and this stands for image show. So I want you to find an image. I don't care where you find it. It could be a picture of yourself, it could be a picture of your dog, it doesn't matter. Find an image of whatever it is that interests you, and I want you to put it in the folder and just follow along this process, this routine here. Okay, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna save this, and then we're gonna open up the terminal, the console in here to run this Python script. So you can do it through multiple ways. You can either say go to the terminal and say new terminal, or you can just say control and then backtick. So I use control backtick and I got the terminal up. If you don't know how to get that and you don't want to learn the command, the shortcuts, then you go up to your menu. You won't see the menu right up here, but you bring your mouse all the way up to the top, click on the terminal, and then click new terminal. Okay, so run this code, terminal, new terminal. That would open up terminal directly in Visual Studio Code, so you don't have to keep going back and forth. I mean, if you really want to, you could also do this, right? You could also go back here and then you can run this file. You could also go in here and say, okay, this is week1.py. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say Python and week1.py. You could also do this, but it's more convenient if you have everything in one working environment than to have to toggle between these two different areas. But just to show you that it can also work, so I'm going to just run the code from the terminal first, and I'm going to show you how to do it in Visual Studio Code. So run python week1.py. You waited for a brief second right there and it's done running, but you don't see anything coming up. And the reason why you don't is because when it opened up the image really quickly, and then it automatically closed itself. So what you want to do is that you said, hey, look, I want you to open up the image, but don't shut down immediately. Wait instead for a key press. So we're going to add another step here to say cv2.waitKey. So what does waitKey do is that it says wait for a pressed key, right? Is wait for a key press in a way. Wait for a key press. Wait for a pressed key. Okay, so we're gonna say just put a 0 in here and say when you get a key press, then you close the image. So I'm gonna save this file again. Now I have 4 lines of code here: line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4. I have 4 lines of code here, and just to be consistent, we'll also add our command in here and say wait for a key press. Okay, and then we're gonna go ahead and just do python week1.py, run that, and what do you know? You have the image coming up. Okay, so to close this image, all you need to do is to hit somewhere on your keyboard, press any key on your keyboard, and it should close the image. So I'm gonna show how that's done in Visual Studio Code. Remember, I have my terminal on. How do you get the terminal up? You go to terminal and you say new terminal in your menu bar. So go to your menu bar, click terminal, new terminal. You can also use the shortcut. The shortcut is Control backtick. So Control backtick would launch the key bar. Yep, so Control backtick. And once you're in here, you can just call the file Python. And what do you name the file? I name it week1.py. So this is what you name the file. And I name it week1.py. So I'm going to just say that, run enter, and bam, the image is shown. Okay, so and then to close it, just press any button. So I'm going to press space, press enter, it doesn't matter. But here it says wait for key press. Once that's done, run it in there. So this is sort of the bare minimum. You will need to get used to this routine a lot. So this is why I focus on this, and I'm spending a little bit of time just going through this routine right here and giving you all the commands here, because you will be using this routine a lot. Okay, so you will have to learn how to read an image in there. There's other things you can do, and as we add more things, let me go ahead and show you. For example, this is an image, right? We could actually go ahead and say, we could say the height, the width, and the dimension, unpack that from image.shape. So what this is doing is, image itself, it contains a lot of other attributes. Now, one of the attributes it contains, including the size, including the height, the width. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say dot shape. So when we say dot shape, it basically says return 3 values, and in the order of the values returned, it would be height, width, and the depth respectively. Okay, so you could also go ahead and say print, and because I'm using Python 3.9, so I can use the f expression, and I can say height of the image, and I will put a h, not an f but an h, and I can put a width, again w, because that's what I name it, and I can say the depth, and I can put d. Okay, so I'm gonna bring up the terminal a little bit more so you can see more space to work with. And let's make sure I save this file. I did have that. So I'm gonna go ahead and say run. And now the image comes up. I can press enter, but I also see my image. I see that my image, my JPEG file, is 1500 of height, 1100 of width, and I have RGB, right? Red, green, blue. Now yours will obviously differ from mine, unless it's a massive coincidence or you're using exactly the same image as mine. But depending on what image you pass in, you will see different height, width, and depth. Okay, you can also do a couple of other things. For example, another very common operation, and I'm teaching you all these common routines because this is something that you may have to do a lot, especially when you work with your own homework later on. You will have to get used to this routine. So if this is going a little bit too fast for you, so what I recommend you do is to just pause the video and really try to internalize and really try to memorize, commit this to memory. Okay, then the next thing I want you to learn is to very quickly crop up an image. So for example, in computer vision, we have this, the technical term for that is the region of interest. So I can actually say ROI, that's region of interest, okay, and I will say take region of interest, and I'm gonna put, say, image, and I'm gonna put I'm gonna slice the image. So I'm gonna randomly take a value. I'm gonna say 200 to 500, some random numbers, and as long as the numbers are within here, I'm fine, right? So I don't want to put something like 3000 to 5000. That wouldn't make sense because it would be out of the boundaries of the image, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and actually say something like, let's say 500 to, I don't know, 600, 600 maybe this is 300 difference, so this would also be 300 difference. So what I'm doing is that I'm saying take the image and find 200 to 500, and then find 500 to 800, and create a region from that. Okay, now I'm gonna quickly just comment here. I say create a region of interest, create a ROI from x coordinate is, what is the x coordinate? The x coordinate would be 500, and y coordinate would be what? Would be 200. To x equals to 800, and y equals to 500. Okay, so x and y, and I'm gonna explain to you how this coordinate system is done, and that will be in week 2. I'm gonna go and explain the details of computer vision in Python, and I'm gonna show you how to understand these coordinates and stuff. For now, I'm just randomly guessing that this would be somewhere meaningful, but interesting to note is that the format of Opencv, you go with image and you say start y to ny, and then you put a comma, you say start x to x. So that's what we're doing here. Okay, n of x. So that's kind of the format. This is also quite important to know, right? So now I'm not gonna actually show the image anymore. So what I'm gonna do instead, I'm gonna comment this line out. I'm gonna take a copy of that, and this time I'm gonna say ROI, and this is the region of interest. Okay, so just to show you, I'm gonna not make this a square, but maybe make this somewhere like, I'm gonna make it maybe 600 to 700. Okay, and save it. Now go back to your terminal, Python week1.py, and bam, you should be able to crop something out. Okay, so obviously you're gonna have to fine-tune the numbers a little bit. We haven't learned about things like feature extraction, so you won't know what to do with it. But I think I already did this practice one time, so I have the coordinates perfectly, but I'm not sure if this is correct. Let me run that, and you will see the face being cropped out, and that's fine. Okay, so now I want you to go ahead, use your own images, pause this video, use your own image, and start to practice this. Okay, if you manage to get this far, then I want you to just leave a comment somewhere in the study group to let me know that you're following the course and that you managed to do this far. You don't have to use exactly this image, use any of your own image, and I want you to just comment somewhere on a Facebook post so I know that you are actually follow along, and I know roughly how many people is following this study group. Okay, so I'm gonna give you the link right here. So if you're following this study group, this free study group on computer vision essentials, join us, leave a comment somewhere in there, and I'll see you maybe next week. But if you have questions, post the question somewhere, and I'll come to it. I'll help you out. Okay. And that's it for this one. For this week, we did a lot of setup. We make sure our computer has all of the required dependencies, software, packages, all of those things going. And we started working with a simple image. We learned about using the image shape, print out the height, width, depth, crop an image out there, use IM_show and IM_read, and finally wait for key press, render that. Okay. So I want to hear about your experience. I want to hear how it's going for you. If you manage to follow up to this point, leave a comment and let me know. Okay, I'll talk to you soon. See you. Bye.